Okay, so everybody give Barbara O'Neill a big, big welcome.
Thank you. I didn't know they were, they're gone. Good. Just need a pen. The pen's down here. Yes, it was a little bit windy this morning and a little bit wet, but it was still wonderful. I think it's just something you've got to make a decision to do. And once you make the decision to do it, and once you get into the habit of doing it, then you actually wouldn't miss it. So at 6 o'clock this morning, Jenny's texting me, it's a bit wet, and I said, nah, let's go. And we're so glad we did, because you just feel so good after. It's is it Wexford? No, it's not Wicklow, I got it wrong. Wexford County. Somewhere there on the beach at Wexford County. If you ask me anywhere in Australia, I'll know it very, very well. And I know I'm in Dublin, or you say Dublin at the moment. And so in this class, we're going to be looking at my 10 favourite books. My 10 favourite books, that's hard. You know, I've got a library at home of 200 books in it at least. And I've got about 6 in my bag that I'm endeavouring to get through. But I have to tell you that the greatest medical book that I believe that we have today is the Bible. So Bible has to be number one. I love the Bible, I love the stories in the Bible, and I love the illustrations in the Bible, and you probably already know that because I do quote from it a little bit, and also there are illustrations on healing. There are illustrations of how people healed in times past. There's the famous story of Hezekiah who had a boil and they made a poultice out of figs. Did you know that? And there's also the story of Jesus putting the clay on the blind man's eyes and asking him to go and wash, and he came away seeing. No, it wasn't just the clay. It was certainly the hand of God being able to heal him. See, the body's been designed to heal itself. So what makes the most sense to me is to work with the healing powers in the body. So I love the Bible. If you're not used to the Bible, the best place to start is the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, where you see the stories of Jesus. And you might have already written down Psalm 104 verse 14, that God gave herbs for the service of man. And we've touched on a few herbs. One herb, of course, is castor oil. And I've had a few people give me feedback on how castor oil has helped them. I don't advise you take it internally, but externally, it penetrates very, very deep. In my chapter on the heart in Sustainme, I also mention a few herbs, and one herb that I'm apparently quite famous for, other than castor oil, is cayenne pepper. And cayenne pepper is a remarkable herb. Cayenne pepper thins the blood. Cayenne pepper acts as a vasodilator. That means it opens the blood vessels all through the body, and it also strengthens the arterial wall. So an excellent herb for the heart. A man came to me one day and he said, look, I'm in trouble. This was about 10 years ago. He said, my nose keeps bleeding. I knock my hand and I bruise, and I know straight away. What do I know? This man is on some strong blood thinners. I said, you're not on the rat poison, I mean the warfarin, are you? Because do you know that's what it is? It causes rats to bleed to death. And of course they don't give as much to humans. They don't actually bleed to death, but they bleed. They bleed so easy. And if someone's on warfarin and they're going to have an operation, they have to stop taking it a week before the operation. Otherwise, as soon as they're cut, they'll bleed. But not cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper thins the blood. But if you take a bucket of cayenne pepper a day, it will not hurt you. Isn't that interesting? And yet, with a lot of the medications, you overdo them and you can get seriously ill. There's a book called Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. And in the book Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss, he devotes half a page to every herb, book was written in, I think, the early 1900s. He devotes half a page to every herb, and he devotes 10 pages to cayenne pepper. And he quotes 2 doctors. And one doctor says it's impossible to abuse cayenne pepper. Did you hear that? You could take a bucket a day and it will not hurt you. But I don't know anyone who takes a bucket a day. We have got common sense, haven't we? What would you start with? Maybe half a teaspoon 3 times a day and build up as you are able. Remember, it's impossible to abuse it. It will not hurt you. And once that cayenne pepper gets into the blood, opens the blood vessels, thins the blood, gets a better delivery of blood all through the body. And if it happens to come across an area where little capillaries are bleeding, it'll seal it. It'll seal it? That sounds like an opposite thing. Opens the blood vessels, but it'll seal them if they're bleeding. Remember Psalm 104 verse 14? God gave herbs for the service of man, meaning the herbs come in and they work with the needs of the body. That's quite unique. My second book, in fact, the short name for the second book is, we call it MH. Ministry of Healing. I think there are a few books out of there. In fact, I love this book so much, I've memorised one page of it. It's page 127 of the Ministry of Healing. It's out of the chapter, The Physician, the Educator. Did you know that's what physician means? Educator. But unfortunately, I know in Australia today with Medicare, they're only allowed to spend 10 minutes per person. I was in London last week and one doctor said 7 minutes per person. How much are they going to find out in that amount of time? And that's why I believe that we should be our own doctors, because only we know how we feel, only we know what we've been through, and only we know how our body responds or reacts to different things. That's why I love this formula. The formula is, look at the history, it'll tell you. It'll tell you why this finger's sore. It'll tell you why maybe that foot doesn't work as well. You look at the history. We are what we are today a lot of the time because of our history, and our symptoms are basically the body knocking on the door saying, excuse me, this is where I need help, and response. Watch the body's response, because your body can tell you what no man can tell you. Your body can tell you what no test can tell you. That's why part of being your own doctor is listening. And in page 127 of the Ministry of Healing, the author says the only hope of better things is the education of people in the right principles. And that's what these classes are all about. Teaching the correct principles. That's what Sustainme and Self-Heal by Design are about. Teaching the correct principles. The next sentence says, let the physicians teach the people that restorative power lies not in drugs, but in nature. Got that? There's only one healer, and that's this body. Only one, and that's this body. And given the right conditions, it will maintain itself well. And if it's not well, given the right conditions, it can start to heal, because it was designed to heal itself. So remember, drugs never cure. Now, in a crisis, a drug can save a life. There is no doubt about that. But in the people that I meet, God teaches me many things. And one of the first promises that I claimed when I was getting into natural health was Psalm 32, verse 8. In Psalm 32, verse 8, the Bible says, I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way that thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eye. What a promise. The greatest teacher this world has ever known has promised to guide us and lead us and teach us, because this body was designed to heal itself. And he knows this body better than we know this body. And he gave us herbs for the service of man. And he gave us simple lifestyle habits, as I've already outlined to you in the Sustainme principles. And as was illustrated up on the board this morning, running up and down the hills in the morning, and if possible, dive in a cold plunge or dive in that beautiful sea. You know, after I've dived in the sea, I don't have a shower. I love those minerals on my skin because there are 92 minerals in that seawater. And guess what else I do? Yes, I take a couple of mouthfuls. Real cheap mineral supplement, real cheap. Now, I probably wouldn't do it if it was near a big city that had some big industries dumping their waste in there, but where we are, it's fairly clean, and those waves are constantly pounding, which are purifying. So the Ministry of Healing has taught me much. It touches on some simple natural remedies. What I also like about it, there's a chapter on mind cure. It even goes to the mind and how even the mind can be healed. So that was one of my first health books, MH, meaning the Ministry of Healing. Another book that a guest told me about is The Calcium Lie. Now, when anyone tells me, Barbara, this is a good book, you should read it, I get it straight away. And sometimes it is, and sometimes not so much. Sometimes I get a lot out of a book, sometimes I get a little bit out of a book. But I really have to work on my memory. The only reason I can say and do what I do is because I've gone over it a lot of times. And with The Calcium Lie, it's only a small book, but it's power-packed, and that's what I love about a book. If it's got a lot of information, go straight to the point. You will notice in my books there's no waffling on, I go straight to the point. In fact, Sustainme would be not much bigger than Self-Heal by Design if we hadn't put all the photos in. And the graphic designer said, you got a choice. We can go colour and we can go photos, or we can make it small and just have mostly writing. And so we decided to go colour. And I think the colour is great because a picture tells 1,000 words. And there are little illustrations of how to do the poultices, etc., etc. I did have to talk to him about one picture he put in where I think the pancreas was on the wrong side, but we fixed that. We fixed that. But The Calcium Lie, I love to know where the author's coming from. It's by Dr. Robert Thompson, and he was a GP, and he was experiencing what many GPs are experiencing. The same people come back with the same problems, and the drug's not quite doing it anymore, and they want a stronger drug, and he was frustrated. He knew that people were not actually getting well. They're just being masked, but it takes a long time to do medicine. So he decided to do a nutrition course, and his eyes were opened. He said, what I found interesting, we do touch on this in medicine, but it's just, woo, what was that? It's just rush through. But in the nutrition course, he went into more detail. His eyes were opened. And he says a very interesting thing. He says that he believes the clearest indicator of a creator God is seawater, because seawater has the exact same mineral proportion and balance as is in the human body. And our bones are made up of that mineral proportion. Our muscles, our blood, all fluids in our body are made of that mineral balance and proportion as is found in seawater. In fact, did you know that the Navy in the war, if someone needed a blood transfusion, they would transfuse with seawater, because very quickly the body converts it to blood because it is the exact same mineral balance and proportion. And that's why seawater is often called an isotonic solution. And in the book, he shows that bones aren't made of calcium. How many people in aged care with osteoporosis are taking a calcium supplement every day? And he says it's useless because bones are not made of calcium. Bones are made of 12 main minerals and 64 trace minerals. So what do bones need? 12 minerals and 64 trace minerals. That's not rocket science. Where do we get that? Seawater. I've got some good news. You don't have to drink seawater unless you have a couple of mouthfuls like I did this morning. You can use the whole salt. And here in Ireland, I've seen a couple of different local salts, hand harvested. One is Akil. I think it's a little island. I know where in Australia and also America they use Celtic salt and Baja salt. I went into a shop in America, it was a health food shop one day, looking around, I was giving meetings nearby, and a man came up and he said, so, you're the reason we can't buy Celtic salt. And that's actually how I met Paul. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. I came out of the Happy Pear, a great restaurant we like to go to, and he looked up and he went, "Are you from Australia?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Australian." He said, "I've just watched a lecture on you on salt and water. That little bit of salt on the tongue, crunch it, and then drink a glass of water, best way to hydrate the body." So no matter where I am, I usually always encourage people, source out your local salts because it's an excellent form of minerals. Another way to get all of those minerals is dark green leafy vegetables. They're high in all of those minerals. But what's happening today, many people's bones are deteriorating because they're having too many stimulants. Too much alcohol, too much coffee, too much refined sugar. These stimulants create an acid condition in the body which causes a leaching of the minerals. So a lot of people aren't having the whole salt, not having enough greens, having too many stimulants. And as we looked at yesterday, the hormones are out of balance. Remember that progesterone builds bone-building cells. Now, if you didn't catch all that, I've got some good news. In my book, Sustainme, I've got a chapter called Building Better Bones, and it's all outlined in that chapter. So I really enjoyed Calcium.ie because he shows very clearly some very clear points on the importance of nourishing this body. I think he's got another chapter called The Fat Lie, the Cholesterol Lie, the Salt Lie, the milk lie, because we were taught as children you've got to drink milk to get calcium. Well, the cow can because it's got about 5 stomachs, but we don't have 5 stomachs. We can't access the calcium like the cow can. And by the way, what does the cow eat to get such strong bones? Grass. I've got some good news, you don't have to eat grass. You can eat lettuce, you can eat kale, rocket. There are so many lovely greens. So the Calcium Lie, I very much enjoyed that one. And the Great Cholesterol Con. The Great Cholesterol Con, I'll just put CH for the cholesterol. The Great Cholesterol Con is written by Dr. Malcolm Kendrick. Early in the year, I was at a conference somewhere in the UK, in England, and he was speaking there. I find him a very interesting author. He's a little sarcastic, but also a little humorous. And he basically says, I'm still waiting for the proof that cholesterol causes heart disease. It's a con. It's actually not true. I'm reading another book of his at the moment. I'm not going to put up there because he's already got one book up there. It's called The Clot Thickens. Again, showing how it's not cholesterol. And when you realise how much money the pharmaceutical companies have made out of cholesterol. And when you realise that the side effects are breast cancer. Yesterday we looked at how our hormones are made from cholesterol. So breast cancer, memory loss, Alzheimer's, dementia, and muscle wasting. They're the side effects of cholesterol-lowering medication. How many people are showing signs of dementia in their 60s, 70s, 80s when actually it's the side effect of cholesterol-lowering medication? And when you realise it's not even cholesterol that's causing heart disease. And when you realise from the Framingham little study that's been going for about 40 years. I love this study. It's not funded by the pharmaceutical companies or the meat industry or the dairy industry or the tobacco industry. It's an independent study, and what it showed is that people with high cholesterol levels don't get Alzheimer's. Do everyone get that? Would you like a moment's silence to digest it? And the reason is the brain is the fattiest organ in the body. It loves fat and it loves cholesterol. So that's very interesting reading, especially just to know the truth on cholesterol. I'm not going to put all the other books up on the board about cholesterol, but they are quoted in the back of my book, Sustainme, in the Heart chapter. The Great Cholesterol Con by Dr. Malcolm Kendrick. The Great Cholesterol Lie by, I think it's Dwight Lundell. The Great Cholesterol Deception by Dr. Peter Dingle. The Great Cholesterol Myth by Johnny Bowden. The Great Cholesterol Hoax. We're running out of names. And because we're running out of names, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, she wrote a book called Put Your Heart in Your Mouth. So put your heart in your mouth basically is showing how what we eat has a lot to do with heart disease. And the first 3 chapters, she looks at all the environmental poisons that damage the cells that line our arterial wall. And when the cells that line our arterial walls are damaged, then a clotting system sets up. And in that clotting system, there's a lot of platelets clumped together, there's red blood cells clumped together, and the covering around the cell is 50% fat. So when they test that plaque, they discover fat. And they discover a type of cholesterol. So thus the theory, it must be cholesterol that's causing heart disease. But to say that cholesterol causes heart disease is like saying that the fire trucks are causing the fire. Well, they must be causing the fire. Have you noticed they're the one common denominator at every fire? Can you see that reasoning? It defies reasoning. Do you know, I think it's time for us to be educated no matter who we are. No matter who we are, no matter what we do in our life, because we are the doctor. And remember 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, where the Bible says, I've not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and a sound mind. And that's what a sound mind does. It weighs up the pros and cons. It actually reads the information in these books. And I'm so thankful for the authors of these books, and most of them are written by doctors who were frustrated that their patients weren't getting better. Because drugs never cure disease. They just change the form and location. It's the body and the body alone that can heal, and it will if you give it the right conditions. So I very much appreciate Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride for exploring all the environmental poisons in detail that come in and damage the arterial wall, coming in from our food, coming in from our clothes, coming in from the cleaning products in our house. They're everywhere, they're everywhere, they're everywhere. It's time to go back to natural fibres. I'm very fussy about where my dollar goes. I don't mind spending a little bit more if I'm supporting local industry, supporting local salts, supporting local wool mills, supporting local organic gardeners. That's where I want my dollar to go. And that affects basically also what's going in my mouth. She shows that fat doesn't cause heart disease. We've touched on that. I think most people have got that. It's the chemicals that we are exposed to today, and it's all since the Industrial Revolution. And if you have a look at the timeline on heart disease, #1 killer still in the world today, you'll find it all started to rise after the Industrial Revolution. No, it's not due to fat. People have been eating fat for centuries. No, it's the Industrial Revolution where chemicals were created, chemical fabrics, nylon, acrylic, polyester. I've told my staff at Misty Mountain Health Retreat, polyester's not allowed in our health retreat. One of the staff bought a polyester blanket to put on the end of the bed, and I came in and went, "What's that? Where did that come from?" Let's get cotton. Let's get the soft wools. And you know another problem with polyester? You can take it to the tip. I don't know what you call it here, but we live way out in the country, so there's no garbage delivery there. So we burn a lot, and we compost a lot, and we bury some. Tins, things like that, we bury. But the polyester blankets, there's no way to get rid of them. If you burn them, now you poison the air because it's chemicals. And if you dig it in the ground, you know what happens now? You poison the soil. And the next one might surprise you, but it might not. Some people are wearing it. So what's it doing to the body? And the skin is an organ that breathes, that absorbs. So please, don't let it touch your body. So that's Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride's book. Now, this guy's written a few books. So has Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, and I'm going to put another one of her books here because it's a totally different subject. It's Gut and Psychology, and it's a bestseller. And Gut and Psychology I found very interesting because I worked as a psychiatric nurse when I was late teens, early 20s, and I didn't see people get better. Again, I saw the same people come back again and again. And some nights, night admission ward, the police would bring someone in who's, going a bit crazy. Sometimes 6 police, big burly police trying to hold them down. What would we do? Injection. That's what they do now. They just inject. In fact, I can tell if someone's on psychiatric medication by the way they walk. They basically like this. The medication takes away all love, all hate, all creativity, but they're not going crazy anymore. So the medication is calming them. But I've got some good news. I've met 5 people in my travels who were diagnosed with bipolar schizophrenia, and they're now medication-free and managing. Isn't that good news? I never heard of such a thing. So what's the answer? It's actually the Sustainme principles. The brain needs hydration. The brain needs sleep. Little by little, as the body gets stronger and the mind gets stronger, and sometimes it can be a hormonal imbalance, especially if it all began about puberty. That's a clear sign the hormones can do it. So implementing all the things that can bring back balance, often then the medication can be reduced. So Gut and Psychology, I love what she does going inside the gut. And she shows that slaughtering the gut flora. Now, the last lecture yesterday, we looked at the microorganisms that line our gastrointestinal tract. She shows how very important they are. And she shows how, when they are not working well, substances can get into the blood that have an effect on the mental side of our disease, the mental aspect of our body. And she shows how restoring the gut, restoring digestion, restoring so that we now absorb only the best things. And remember, that's what our gut flora does. It protects not only the body, but it also protects the brain. There are some substances that aren't broken down properly that are getting into the blood that have effect like morphine on the body. So I found that book incredibly interesting. And going to Psychology, The Brain That Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Doidge. The Brain That Changes Itself, it's a bestseller as well. And what I loved about The Brain That Changes Itself, he has many stories in there, many stories in there of people who had a stroke or maybe a serious accident, were told they'd never walk again, or their arms would never walk again, and they do. Which I just love stories like that. In fact, there was one doctor that had a stroke and the whole of his left side hardly worked. So you know what he did? He just started crawling around his doctor's surgery. So if you come to see the doctor, he's crawling around the floor. And eventually, he was able to walk around holding on to things, and then eventually he was able to walk. What's that old saying? Where there's a will, there's a way. If you say you can, you will, and if you say you can't, you won't. So it's a very encouraging book for people who've had serious injuries or who've had strokes, and there are parts of their body that don't move. How many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3 more to go. So the next one, and so I'm trying to choose books on different subjects. Wheat Belly Wheat Belly's by Dr. William Davis, and Wheat Belly gives the story of what they've done to the wheat. The wheat was changed, it was hybridised in the 1950s, and it was rushed through with no safety studies. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Rushed through with no safety studies. And only now we're beginning to see what that wheat did. The hybridisation of the wheat, you see, why did they do it? They wanted to create a plant with a high yield of grain. And they did, but the plant only grows this high now because it's got a thick stem, because it is about 6 to 8 times more grain per acre on that plant. But only now are they starting to see that in that hybridisation process, the protein or the gluten structure was changed. That's why we see so much gluten intolerance today, so much celiac, so much sensitivity. And in my last lecture today on brain fog, I will show you how this wheat is one of the side effects and why. I find if someone has got some serious illnesses like psoriasis or eczema, Crohn's disease, colitis, allergy, things like hay fever, asthma, the wheat must stop. Now that wheat can be out of your body in 24 hours, but the effect can remain for sometimes at least 2 months. And if a baby has eczema, I say, mother, stop eating the wheat. And some people say, but wheat's been around for centuries. Not this one, not this one. It went worldwide in the late 70s, so by the 1990s, all the pastas, all the breads, all the cereals, cakes, donuts, etc., they're all made out of the hybridised wheat. The other structure that was changed was the starch structure. And this starch structure gets the blood sugar level up higher even than refined sugar. And if you have a look at the release of this wheat to the world and the explosion of diabetes, goes hand in hand. Diabetes has been around ever since sugar was refined, there's no doubt about that. And the cheap seed oils certainly are a contributing factor, but the hybridised wheat is another big contributing factor. So Wheat Belly tells the story, and he's got decades of clinical practice up his sleeve. So another book that I really love is Holistic Herbal. Now, I can't remember if that's an H or a WH. Holistic Herbal is written, can't remember the name at the moment, but Hoffman, I think it's Hoffman is his name, I think David Hoffman. And what I like about that book, because there are so many herbal books, so many, it's A4 size, but it's not very thick, and every herb is a photo of it on white paper, so it's very clearly to identify. He just gives the basic actions of this herb, contraindications, so it's clear and simple. Because some herb books have got about 3 pages on every herb, and by the time you finish, you think every herb's just about a cure-all. But what I like about his book, I think it's a really good book for the home because it's a simple book. It's very easy to identify. So Holistic Herbal is a great herb book. One of the body's many cries for water. Now that's a lot to write. So the body's many cries for water is written by a Dr. Batman Geheldich. We'll call him Dr. B. And he was, is an Iranian doctor, and then he was a political prisoner. And all he had in prison was water. And all the inmates would come to him because he was a doctor, and all he had was water. And so he'd give them a glass of water, and 15 minutes later he'd give them another glass of water, and 15 minutes later he'd give them another glass of water. That was his treatment protocol, because he had nothing else. And he wanted to do something, but what really surprised him, how everyone was getting better. No matter what their problem was, they were getting better. The man with the asthma attack started to breathe easy after 3 cups of water, so 3 cups of water, that would be half an hour. The man with constipation was getting healed. The man with hay fever was getting healed. The man with constipation was getting healed. In fact, you name it, they were all healing. And the inmates said, we've got this great doctor. He's just fixing it all. But his treatment protocol was a glass of water every 15 minutes for an hour. And he was surprised at how everyone was healing. So he started to document his findings. And after a period of time, the government changed and he was freed. And he said, look, do you mind if I stay a bit longer? I'm right in the middle of this fascinating research. I don't think anyone's ever said that to them before. And the book, One of the Body's Many Cries for Water, came out of his research. He's presented at medical conferences, he's written in medical journals, but it's not a very popular message because the pharmaceutical company can't make a fortune out of water. So what I found fascinating in his book, he goes to the brain and look what happens when it's dehydrated. Yes, headaches is a common one, but also negative thought patterns in a dehydrated brain. He goes to the lungs and he shows that the little bronchioles shrink up in a state of dehydrated, contributing to asthma. He goes to the stomach and he shows that the lining of the stomach is a thick mucosal wall protecting against the hydrochloric acid. He said that he's healed 3,000 cases of stomach ulcer by the time he published that book with water alone. A glass of water half an hour before the meal, it immediately thickens that mucosa lining. Constipation is often due simply to dehydration. And then he goes to the joints and shows how that the fluid around the joints is synovial fluid. It's 99% water. So it can be a contributing factor to arthritis. And the pancreas on the left side, it releases two hormones into the blood, which is insulin and glucagon, to balance blood glucose levels, but it needs water to make them. So someone can be suffering from diabetes, and a contributing factor can be dehydration. And the pancreas also, it produces 5 different enzymes to help finalise digestion. But if we're not drinking enough water, those enzymes can't be made properly. His title is One of the Body's Many Cries for Water. He's got another title. He's not sick, he's thirsty. And the other title is Don't Treat Thirst with Medications.
Thank you, Barbara. Sorry to interrupt, but it's nearly time to move on to our children's nutrition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll get rid of that one. And we'll get rid of that one. And I have to tell you that this was a very difficult lecture for me because I have so many books that I have got a lot out of and I love, but I just targeted 10 that I got a lot out of, an enormous amount out of them. And you see by what I showed you, they're coming from quite a lot of different subjects. I'm glad you're here for child nutrition, even though I don't see any children, but we used to be children, didn't we? And how we were raised and fed as children affects greatly the way we are today. Now, we can't change that, but I'm curious, I'm inquisitive, I want to know why. But it can explain much about what's happening in our bodies today. But also, I'm sure if we don't have children or grandchildren, we have neighbours that have children, we have nieces and nephews, so we all have contact with children. And as Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. So the food we're eating, it lays the foundation for the type of body that we will have as we grow. There was a newspaper article in Australia about 4 years ago, and the front page said, "Mum, I can't jump anymore." So that was a real catchy title. And what they're showing today is so many children's bones and muscles are not developing properly because they're on the screen too much. I had one lady, she said to me, she's in a little cul-de-sac, and she said, every year, Christmas Day, we all go out, neighbours say hi, and the children are showing their new bikes and their new skateboards, and I don't know, sometimes even an electric scooter. She said this year no child was there. Because what were their presents? iPads, iPhones, game stations. So I think it's a good idea. Jack, my PA, she was here yesterday, the very, very tall girl. She has 4 boys, 17-year-old twins, a 14-year-old boy and a 12-year-old boy. And they're homeschool boys. And she had to go home because she's got a thriving business back home. But guess who runs her business most of the time? The boys. They take turns homeschooling. One's homeschooling, the other one comes and does the work. So those 4 boys don't have phones. They don't have computers and they don't have iPads. And they're incredibly fit and they go to the gym every day. And apparently they've got Lego castles, incredible buildings in their room. Lego is great for kids. Kids are losing their ability to recreate because being in front of the screens is almost like being hypnotised. It's turning them into zombies. Now, you know what they thought? Children are so tech savvy today. They're going to be really good drivers. Wrong. They're hopeless drivers. They thought their skills would be so good, but it's not true. It's not true. The more natural the environment, the more outside children are with their hands and their feet in the dirt, the more they're climbing trees, the more they're riding their bikes, the more the brain is developing. As children grow, if you look at should it be equal physical and equal mental, no, actually should be overloaded more on the physical. So the reason children aren't jumping anymore is because their bones and their muscles are not developing properly. And eyesight. I was talking to one eye doctor, she said children's eyesights, the muscles in their eyes, I should say, the long and the short range muscles are set by the age of 11. But what's happening today, children are getting too much short range and not enough long range, and so children are needing glasses younger and younger. In fact, one old doctor said we should spend more time looking at the mountains. So those short and long range muscles, they need contrast. They need contrast between the long and also the short. The time to prepare for a child is actually before you even conceive, but most people don't usually have that privilege of preparing before you even conceive, so that the body is strong. The lady, I always say, it's called labour for a reason. It's hard work, so start training. Start training. And every mother should be doing this every day. Got that? Squatting. Feet flat on the ground. If it's too hard, you squat with your back against the wall. And what that does is that gets the pelvis, the pelvic bones, the pelvic muscles, the pelvic ligaments, all ready for birth. In fact, my 6th child, I learnt about this, and I squatted 10 minutes a day through my whole pregnancy. Now, when he was born, the whole baby flew out of me, one push with the bag intact. They had to catch him. Whoa. That pelvis and those muscles and their ligaments, they certainly got ready. And that's a position that not many ladies are able to do. Now, you look at children, I looked at them when they were playing marbles and things like that. They're all sitting on the ground like this, don't they? They play like that. They play like that. So it's just the best position is that squatting position. If your knees don't like it, you might have to adjust it a little bit, but it's a great way to prepare for birth. Mothers say to me, what do I eat? I said, what you always eat. And what should we eat? High fibre, generous proteins and great fats. That's all you need. Lots of fruits and vegetables. Some ladies who are very slight might need a 3rd evening meal. So it's just, you've got to test what works for you. The Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, prove all things. That's a challenge. Prove it. Just see what works for you. Prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. The Sustainme principles I live, and I live by them because I've proved them to work. They maintain me, they sustain me, I love them. So even when Jenny says it's raining, Barbara, I said, oh, don't worry about that. She said, great. And you might notice on those pictures we had rain gear or something on. So the Sustainme principles really are the best thing to prepare a mother nutritionally and also mentally and physically for her birth. I was reading a book. I love reading true stories, people's stories, and this book was about a woman who was a midwife in Auschwitz. It's called The Midwife from Auschwitz. And she was in the resistance, caught, put into Auschwitz, the concentration camp. She was about 50. In 2 years, she delivered 3,000 live babies. Never lost a baby. Now, what are the conditions there? The most horrific. The women are suffering from severe malnutrition. They're in the most horrific conditions mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's filthy. She never lost a baby. So you know what I think? What's happening in our hospitals? What's happening? Never lost a baby. No caesareans. One obstetrician maintained that 90% of caesareans are unnecessary. So I'll give you the story of my husband. His first wife, she was pregnant with their second child. She's in labour and the baby's heart rate dropped. And I think Michael's about 23. And the doctor came in and said, we're going to have to do a caesarean. The heart rate's dropped. And Michael said, no, you're not. Michael's an electrician. He didn't know anything medically. And the doctor said, excuse me, sir, do you want to lose your baby and your wife? Okay, what's happening now? Yeah? And Michael said, no, I know God made babies to come out that way, and that's what's happening, mate. So men, stand by your woman and do not let it really highly qualified because it's just their opinion. Because guess what? Baby was born. Baby was born. Mother and baby, perfectly fine. In fact, we just went to the baby's wedding. She's, how old is she now? She must be 38 or 39, something like that. A lady contacted me. She said, Barbara, I've just had a scan. You know, the scan, the routine scans they give. And it said that the baby's too small and the placenta's breaking down. I said, how pregnant are you? She said, I'm 35 weeks. She said, they want to induce me. I said, no. I said, because it could be wrong. Do you know what a scan is? It's just sound waves coming off. And you know, sometimes they're wrong. And the amount of women who've contacted me and said, I've had a scan. And I said, no. One lady recently, she started a scan. They said, there's something wrong here. I have to go into... So they induced me. It wasn't working. They Caesar. Baby's born. Nothing's wrong. Let it be. Just let it be. I didn't have any scans. And all my babies were born. Remember in the day when they didn't do any scans? You know what they're doing now? They're saying women has to have a scan every month. No. What do you say? Thank you so much for your opinion. I'm going to seriously consider this. And I say if a woman's having a baby in a hospital, go in at the last minute. The last minute. And they haven't got time to do anything. But I had several of my babies at home. You see, it's not a sickness. And some people will say, but what if something goes wrong? Well, look at Auschwitz. 3,000 babies delivered in 2 years. No scans, no medical intervention at all. Is that why they all lived? That was a fairly strong statement. I believe there is a place, absolutely, but in a crisis, which are actually rare, really. Especially if the woman keeps herself fit, keeps herself well nourished, goes to bed early every night, keeps well hydrated, there's no reason why that baby just can't be born. So back to the lady that said to me, I'm 35 weeks. They said, the baby's too small, the placenta's breaking down. I said, well, they could be wrong. And not many people even think that. Do you know, they could be wrong. They could be wrong. I used to work in the operating theatre. I used to assist the doctors. One day I saw them open the wrong finger on the wrong hand. Now, I know it doesn't happen often, but they're human. And it's their opinion. It's their opinion. I'm not against doctors. Some of my best friends are doctors, and I think most doctors are ethical. But the pharmaceutical company is not, and those tests are not always accurate. Please just remember that, especially if you've had a bad diagnosis. So I said to this lady, if I were you, I would not go back. I said, is your baby moving? Yeah. Do you feel good? Yeah, I feel good, good. So she didn't. I said, enjoy your pregnancy. Don't take on the fear. And remember, God said, I have not given you the spirit of fear, but of power. What's power? Knowledge, love, and a sound mind. She didn't go back. She didn't have another scan. She went into labour at 40 weeks. Baby was born, perfect size. Placenta was not breaking down at all. And by the way, if they pick up something might be happening to your baby in pregnancy, what are they going to do? Do you ever ask that? What are they going to do? Just let the baby develop. Give it the right conditions. We don't need fear there. And it's good for mum and dad to read books on birth. My children grew up never hearing scary birth stories. Only amazing birth stories. What an incredible thing it is. My 5th baby, I delivered myself. They thought I had a long time to go. These are the stories my kids grew up on. Yeah, William, he just shot out like a rocket. We had to catch him. My 4th baby, the 2 little children watched the birth. What a great sex education that is, just watching where babies come out of. And how they accept that baby into their family because it came out of the mother. Because birth affects us. And when we have a birth naturally, it's a wonderful massage into the world. And the best milk is breast milk. As I said yesterday, the first 3 days, it's a thick colostrum, and that's very important for our immune system because our gut flora, 70% of our immune system is established in our gut. So very important that the baby go on the breast straight away. Do you know what else happens when the baby's breastfed? Hormones are released to help the mother know just how to raise her little one. But also when you put the baby on the breast within the first half hour, because in the first half hour after birth, that's when the sucking reflex is strongest. What it does is it releases hormones to help the afterbirth come away. And when a baby is feeding on the breast, the baby should feed like that. Got that? Face onto nipple, hands like this. But when a baby's wrapped up and feeding like this, it can drag the nipple and sometimes that can hurt the nipple. So breast is best. If a baby cannot for some reason be breastfed, then the next best is goat's milk. And goat's milk has been used for centuries. It's one of the reasons I was banned in Australia and deemed a threat to public safety. I'm not allowed to give any health advice in Australia. I'm not allowed to speak on health, or $10,000 fine and 10 years in prison. Yeah, Australia's a beautiful country. Pity about the government. So, goat's milk. My husband said, goat's milk? Where's the proof that it's harmful? Has any baby died from goat's milk? And you know what their response was? Well, there's no documented deaths, but it could be lethal. No, goat's milk's been used for centuries, and goat's milk is the milk that is closest to breast milk. I have, I think, 3 grandchildren that were raised on goat's milk, healthy babies. Now, one baby, he was getting thinner and thinner on the mother's breast milk, and we found out through trial and error that that baby had an allergy to wheat and to dairy. And the mother tried to stop, but she couldn't. My son rang me up. He said, "Do your babies cry a lot?" I said, "No, they don't. There's something wrong when a baby cries a lot. There's something wrong." What would be wrong if a baby's crying a lot? Sometimes if the birth was a bit difficult or a bit fast, the baby needs to see a paediatric chiropractor who can actually align the spine and the skull. That can make a big difference. Or maybe the baby has an allergy to what the mother's eating, and dairy and wheat basically are the 2 number 1 allergen foods. So one night, my son just went out and bought a lactose-free milk and went home and gave it to his baby. The baby was starving. The baby was getting thinner. The baby was fighting the breast because the baby was allergic to what the mother was eating. And when William rang me, I said, "Put the baby on goat's milk." So that little boy, Sonny, he's just 3 days ago turned 17. He was raised on breast milk. Sorry, not breast milk, goat's milk. He was raised on the goat's milk. And within 1 month, this little one was lovely and full and well covered and happy. He became the most peaceful, calm little baby. So when babies are crying a lot, when babies have eczema, when babies have asthma, it can be from a few things, and one can be the childhood vaccinations. I've met many a mother that said the baby developed eczema after the vaccination. Michael said his eldest son, after the first shot, went into some breathing distress. It eased, and the doctor said the vaccine had nothing to do with it. So at his 4-month injection, it was really severe. So Michael said after that, no more vaccines. And what he knows now, and what we know now, is that the body can heal itself. And Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, she gives some very good information on what's in the childhood vaccinations, why they are so dangerous. She calls it the childhood poisoning program. Every parent that vaccinates their child, they do it for the best, but they don't realise what they're doing. They're putting too much trust in the medical profession. And what a lot of people think, it couldn't be that bad. Well, we need to investigate. And how you investigate is you go to Dr. Sherry Tenpenny's website, or you just even go to the pharmacist and get a printout of what's in the vaccines. I can tell you, when you discover what's in those vaccines, you do not want to give it to your baby. And if you're still unsure, you can get a piece of paper, write out a statement so anyone who's going to inject the baby, you get them to sign the paper that they will be accountable if there is any side effect. If every parent did that, no child would be vaccinated. And then people say to me, "But do you want all the childhood illnesses to come back?" Well, when you have a look at the history, you will realise, and we looked at that in our last lecture yesterday, that all the childhood illnesses were 80, sometimes 90% wiped out because of an increase in hygiene, sanitation and nutrition. They set up a network of sewage under the London streets. They stopped putting the raw sewage into the Thames, and the people were drinking that water. No wonder there was so much infectious diseases. No, that's what stopped the infectious diseases. It was not the vaccines. In fact, I think it was 70 years ago, there was something like 1 in 1,000 cases of autism. Today, there's 1 in 45. I think Dr. Peter McCulloch, he claims 1 in 35. And this includes attention deficit syndrome, hyperactivity, and autism. And the Amish, in America, there are little communities of Amish they dress in the old ways, they use coursing carts, but they don't vaccinate their children. And the rate of autism in the Amish is something like 2%, whereas in the American community that's vaccinating their children, it can be 1 in 35. And there's always a reason. Remember Newton's third law of motion: to every action there's an equal and an opposite reaction. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, she's a GP who's just blowing the whistle on the dangers of these vaccines. She said 50% of our children are sick. Do you know, I remember when I was a little girl, no kids were sick. You might get a cold occasionally, and you might have diarrhea if you drank some bad water or something, but that was about it. But there are so many sick children today, and there is a reason. I think it's not just the childhood vaccines, there are other reasons. And another reason is that the food that children are eating. Now, have you seen what a little 12-month-old baby will eat? They'll eat bugs, they'll eat worms, they'll eat anything. They put anything in their mouth. My daughter said she heard her little one wake up. He's 11 months old and he's standing up in his cot and the windowsill's there and he's eating all the lady beetles. Eating all that lady. She said one was dead on his cheek and he's smiling with the lady beetles hanging. The gastrointestinal tract is a hollow tube. That's the good news. Just goes in one end and out the other. So how come children become fussy? Isn't that an interesting question? It's because of the food that they are introduced. If a child is given a chocolate, they are not interested in an apple. But if they're hungry, the apple's pretty good. And when should children eat? It all depends on the teeth. So the first teeth that we get are 8 teeth. It's the front teeth. It's 4 at the top and 4 at the bottom, and these teeth are called milk teeth. And the reason they're called milk teeth is because that's what should be baby's main food, is milk. That's why they're called milk teeth. So when do the milk teeth come through? Anywhere between 7.5 months to maybe about 12 months. By about 12 months, sometimes with babies it might be up to 14 months, then all of the 8 teeth are through. So should baby only have milk for the first year? Mostly. 3 things have to be present for a baby to eat any food. Number 1, they should be able to sit. Number 2, they should be able to feed themselves. Number 3, they should have some teeth. What's the point of giving a baby food if there's no teeth? Then it defies reason. There's a Psalm 146 verse 3. It says, "Put not your trust in princes." Who are the princes? They're the authorities in the field. Who are the authorities? The authority in government, the authority in medicine, the authority in nutrition, the authority in herbs. In any area, the Bible says, "Put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. His breath goes forth, he returns unto his earth. In that very day his thoughts perish." In other words, it's just a man or just a woman. What does the Bible say? Don't put your trust in them. You might get their opinion, but what can you do with that opinion? You can take it or leave it. Because God's government is a government of freedom, and freedom is based on free choice. I'm the master of my destiny. I'm the one that chooses what I do and what I do not do to my body. I'm the one that chooses what I do and what I do not do to my baby. Of course you can't abuse that baby. There is common sense there. So why do I bring this psalm in right now? Because the princes, the authorities in the field of pediatrics, are telling mothers to give their babies rice cereal between 4 and 6 months of age. Now they can't sit at 4 months of age. And when you put the rice cereal in the mouth, it's all mashed up. You see, when a baby sucks, it uses the tongue and the top lip. That's how the baby sucks. And you put that rice cereal in, the baby goes like this and it comes straight out. Have you noticed? And then the mother scoops it up and puts it back in. Scoops it up, puts it back in. It defies reason to me. That makes no sense at all. No sense. Why are the princes, the authorities in the field, telling mothers to do that? Because they claim, and it is true, that breast milk in the second 6 months doesn't have as much iron as breast milk in the first 6 months. So they say breast milk's not good enough in the second 6 months. Has God made a mistake? God never makes mistake. The beauty of breast milk is it's perfect for every age. So why does breast milk have more iron in the first 6 months compared to the second 6 months? Have you had a look at how much a baby grows in the first 6 months? They literally explode. Have you looked at how much they grow in the second 6 months? Oh, they're still growing, but not as exponentially fast as in the first. And so what does common sense tell us? The baby's need for iron in the first 6 months is greater than the baby's need for iron in the second 6 months. And that's why I give you that psalm. Put not your trust in princes, because they're not always right. So I didn't take my babies anywhere. They never saw a paediatrician, they never saw a doctor. Why? Why? There's no need. There's no need. But my son James, he's 48 now, he was not interested in food till he was 16 months of age. Just not interested. I go back 500 years, 1,000 years ago. Do you know babies weren't fed food? Did you know that babies were often breastfed till they were 4, 5? And what came out of that era? I just went to the Tesla Museum. He's a pretty smart guy. I'd like to suggest he wasn't given food as a baby. Mozart, Rembrandt, Einstein, all the geniuses of times past were not fed food. Did they suffer? Not at all. And so that's why the mother does it, for fear, because sometimes the princes say your baby won't develop properly, your baby's brain won't develop properly. And so they laboriously mash up all these vegetables, make everything into slop, feed the baby, scoop it up, put it back, scoop it up. Don't make any sense to me. So I first heard this with my first child. The second teeth that come through are the molars. And the molars are grinders. And what do we grind? We grind grain. And it is not until the molars appear. When's that? Anywhere between 14 and 22 months of age. It's not until the molars, the grinders appear, then the glands in the mouth release a salivary amylase called ptyalin. And ptyalin is the enzyme that breaks down starch. Do you know what that means? Babies cannot digest starch until the molars appear. One couple came to me with their little baby, roly-poly baby. They said, our baby's constipated. So I put my detective hat on, because there's always a reason. I said, does the baby eat food? Yes. Is the baby breastfed? Yes. What food does the baby eat? Oh, rice cereal? How old's the baby? 5 months old. Baby can't even sit yet. Rice cereal and sandwiches and pasta. Eesh. And the baby's smiling and I can see 2 teeth. I said, the baby has no teeth. They said, yeah. So if there's no teeth, there's no enzymes or ability to break down the food. And that's why your baby's constipated, because all this starch is going in. There's very little tylen. There's only enough tylen in the mouth to break down that little bit of starch in breast milk. I said, stop the starch. They were shocked. They'd never heard such a thing. I said, what we give the baby? I said, well, your baby's very well padded. I'd like to suggest your baby doesn't need anything but breast milk. And when the baby can sit, when the baby can feed themselves, then it's taste time. This is also taste time. So what you do then is you give the baby a piece of cucumber. And while you're eating your meal, it'll take them your whole meal time to even get through half the cucumber. And they've got little teeth and they nibble, 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 and bits of cucumber will be all over the tray and all over the floor, and a few bits will go in and come out the other end. It's just taste time. Or a piece of apple, or a piece of celery. That's what I used to do. And they were so happy because they think they're doing what you're doing, but all they've got is a piece of celery. Or you can cut all the corn off a cob of corn. Oh, that's perfect. They suck away on that and gum away on that. I was reading the report of some dentists that claiming that the teeth and the jaws and the gums aren't developing properly because people don't eat enough crunchy food. Little ones don't have enough crunchy food. And when little ones are only ever given slop, all that mashed up soft stuff, they don't learn to chew. And their jaws and their teeth don't develop properly. We should be chewing, chewing, chewing. It's like if the little 2-year-old's hungry and it's not quite breakfast, you know what I give them? An apple. No, I don't peel the apple. No, I don't core the apple. An apple. And guess what? They'll work it out. Is that right? And they're so happy because you have trusted them with an apple. Like for a 2-year-old, the apple's this big and they're struggling to get their teeth in. Don't watch, they'll work it out. And by the time they work it out and have eaten half of it, guess what? Breakfast is ready. And if they're a little bit hungry and it's half an hour to lunch, give them a carrot at lunchtime. Takes a long time for them to get through a carrot. But because all my grandchildren and all my children were given crunchy food, they chew. They chew and they chew very well. And so when my children were, I think the youngest was 4, the eldest was 15, I thought I'd better take him to the dentist because I hear that's what you do sometimes. And the dentist looked through all the children in 20 minutes and she said, your children's teeth astonish me. They're so strong. And we didn't give them fluoride or fluoride tablets. Why are they strong? Do you remember what bones are made out of? Minerals. That's what bones are made of. Minerals. I breastfed all my babies to probably about 2, 2.5, last baby 3. So I never gave bottles. I just breastfed them, and then when they had teeth and they could sit and they could feed themselves, they started to eat. It's a slow progression of moving in there. None of my children have allergies, and I think one of the reasons was because they never got starch as babies until the moles are through, which is about 18 months. It differs with each child. So none of them have allergies. They've all got strong teeth. How nice. You save a fortune not going to the dentist. Did I ever give them sugar? No. But we used to make dessert a couple of times a week. We'd use honey or fruits and we'd cook them up. We'd make apple pies, apple strudels. We'd sweeten it with maybe a little maple syrup or a little honey. And they could have their dessert after they've eaten all their veggies. Because I only ever introduced my children to natural food at a young age, they'd eat everything. And I thought, what makes children fussy? Because my kids will eat anything, and my grandchildren, they eat anything because they're introduced to fruits and veggies. Good stuff. I came to the conclusions that parents dictate the tastes of their children. Yes, we would have dessert, but it was always a reward after they've eaten all their meal. But I also noted that some children like some foods more than others. I never made them eat something they didn't like. If they didn't like lettuce, well, they could have cabbage. If they didn't like the tomato, they could have a carrot. So the choice is there. We always started with raw food. And I know when I married Michael 28 years ago, the age of our children was mine 10, he's 11, mine 12, he's 13, mine 14, mine 16, mine 19, mine 21. So that's the 8 children. But I knew that I had to come in a bit carefully with the 11 and the 13-year-old. Because Michael, as a bachelor, Michael can cook toast very well. That's it. That's it. Actually, because I'm away a lot now, he's learned to cook corn and steamed vegetables. Yes, he's getting very clever. But when he's at the retreat, he usually eats with the guests, so it's beautiful food there. So when I married Michael, he and his 2 children lived on carbohydrates. It was cereal and bread, breakfast and pastas. There's a lot of 2-minute noodles in the cupboards. So his little daughter, she was only 11, but she had quite a tummy on her because they ate so many carbohydrates. So within 1 month of me becoming mother and the cook in the home, I had a slender little 11-year-old, and she was very, very happy. But I knew that I had to encourage my new husband and his 2 children in raw food. So this is what I'd do at breakfast. I'd have a very nice fruit salad. I'd have a lovely nut cream and sprinkles to put it on. And that was the first thing on the table. And you could see Michael and his 2 children looking at this and looking at each other as, oh, is this what we're going to eat now? Raw. And Michael would say, is there anything else? And I'd say, oh, the porridge is nearly ready, or the toast is nearly ready, or the toast and scramble is nearly ready. Righto. And they'd eat their fruit salad, and when I'd see that it's half gone, I'd bring the maybe banana muffins, or I'd bring the toast and avocado and scrambled tofu, or I'd bring the oat porridge, or I'd bring the millet porridge and the honey and the organic soy. And you can see them, whew, this is better. Same at lunchtime. First thing on the table was all the salads. I made the salads crisp, best quality, then the salad tastes delicious and got lovely dressings, maybe a hummus, guacamole. And we sit down and you can see them looking worried again. Is this it? Salad. And Michael would say, are there any potatoes? I said, oh, they're nearly ready. Is there anything? Oh, yeah, we've got, but it's nearly ready. And there's one thing Michael does not like, raw or half-cooked potatoes. So then they're eating their salad, and my kids, they're just eating their salad because this is what we're used to. And then when it's almost gone, oh, the potatoes are ready. Oh, the lentils are ready, and all the other stuff come. Because I noted, if you put everything on the table, the salad just gets left. It's all the other stuff that gets eaten. Michael told me about 5 years later, he never realised what I was doing. Because I knew coming in as the new lady in the home, I had to win them. And I won them with beautiful food. People say, you're such a good cook, Barbara. I say, that's because I like eating. And I taste the food. I add more salt or more oil or more herbs. Food should taste fantastic. And if it tastes fantastic, you know, that helps with digestion. When food has no flavour, it's hard to digest. My first cookbook was an Indian vegetarian cookbook. They know how to cook legumes. And so I learned. I didn't even know what a lentil was till I was about 22. But I learned. And so the children grew, they all grew, and the good news is they're all raising their children the same way. Why? Because it works. And not making baby food is so easy. It's such easy parenting, not having to cook and mash up all these little bits and pieces. It's the mealtime, give them a stick of celery. give them and then as they got a little bit older, I'd steam up a little bit of broccoli, a little bit of cauliflower, a bit of carrot. They would see the colour, the shape, they'd taste it, the different taste. So it's not all mashed up together. Who knows what you're eating? And so little by little, we eased the other foods in. I never made special food for babies. I never made special food for children. They just ate what we ate. And when you feed them very well, you don't hear from them for hours. Remember the cooey? 2 o'clock? Cooey! That's the cooey call, the Australian call. Yeah, 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 and children had come running. It was lunchtime. Because the 3 essential food groups are, and I'll just go over this in our last few minutes, fibre. All plant food has fibre. And we looked at how fibre feeds your microorganisms. Fibre's important. Protein. The protein that we ate was always legumes, nuts and seeds. And you can make some beautiful creams and mayonnaises, also sweet creams or savoury creams out of blending cashews with a bit of water. If it's sweet, a bit of maple syrup. If it's savoury, some garlic, lemon. You can make delicious dressings using the nuts. And great fats, nuts and seeds, and also olive oil, coconut oil. They're the 3 essential food groups. Did we have carbohydrates? We did, but it wasn't the main part of the meal. Sometimes we'd have rice, sometimes we'd have potatoes. Well, actually, with Michael, it's potatoes every main meal, which is fine. I like potatoes. Sometimes it's half potatoes, half sweet potatoes. Sometimes it might be quinoa. About once a week we had spaghetti because every child loves spaghetti, but we always had a great big salad, and then the sauce, there were brown lentils. So we had a variety of meals. All my children learnt to cook. They can all cook. And I also endeavoured to teach them skills. So they can all cook, they can all clean, they can all wash, they can all sew buttons on, boys and girls, and the girls can even chop wood, not as good as the boys, but almost as well. So it's a wonderful thing to teach the children skills. Unfortunately today, because technology is coming so much, we've got so many children that are unskilled in just the basic things in life. I see by the looks I'm getting from Jenny, my time is up.